Politics in Uganda has become high-stakes business, where winning a parliamentary seat is less about leadership and more about how much money one can spend, how much money one will be able to gather in the 5 years they will be in parliament. Is Burahia constituency an exception? My guest today is Charles Mpaji, the man running for Burahia constituency parliamentary seat. Good to have you on the show. The hunter has become the hunted.
Thank you, Kanari. It's very interesting reversal of roles.
Yes.
Yes.
You recently ran in 2021 for the same constituency, but did not make it. What did that experience teach you?
Lots of experiences, Kanari. Beyond the money is thinking about this country and what our role and responsibility should be. I've spent many years working as a journalist. I worked in print, I worked on TV here at NBS for the last about 4 years. I've worked elsewhere, also on radio for many years as a talk show host. One of the biggest lessons is what kind of politics are we running, what kind of country do we want to have, and what our responsibility should be. It gets frustrating when you get into the field and the questions are not about your ideas, what you think about the country, your appreciation of our challenges as a country, and more towards what it is that someone else is offering. They may not confront you with what you're offering in terms of money, but what other people are offering, and that becomes the yardstick for comparison on who is likely to be elected and who doesn't get elected. And that's a bit frustrating, not just frustrating as an individual because you're a candidate, but more concerning because you think about the country and think about what exactly are we thinking about? Where exactly do we think we're going? How do we intend to get there?
You, as a journalist, of course, who spent so many years querying some of these things, especially around leadership, you are convinced that when you're actually running for a parliamentary seat, it's more about leadership until you get to the field and realize it's more about the money. Has your perception changed from when you decided to run again?
Yes and no. Yes, because you realize that you need money to run. You realize that you need sometimes to go beyond what you should be doing to be able to convince people. But that's only to an extent. I have always argued. I argued this as a journalist. I asked many people who try to other the people they call the voters and remove themselves. When I contested in Burahia in 2021, I started the race late. I started the race a few days to nomination day. I ran as independent. I did not deploy the resources that people said I deploy. I did not bribe anybody, but I was able to convince 17,083 rural people in Burahia to believe in me, to accept what ideas I was sharing with them, and they gave me their vote. I believe I could have performed better if I had been more effective in guarding the vote, in protecting the vote, because that's a very critical part of any electioneering process. I believe I could have done better if I had spent a little bit more time sharing my ideas and my views with the voting population. I believe I could have done better if I had maybe used a political vehicle to run, not as independent, but to run and say your symbol is a radio. In an area where symbols are so critical that the guy who is handing out the voter locator slip on voting day at the polling station is giving people a symbol. I'll give you an example. In Burahia, the symbol is bus. If you're contesting in an urban area, in Kampala, you remember, you covered that election, the symbol would be the umbrella. If you're running in an area where FDC dominates, the symbol is a key. If you navigate through all that and tell people, I am Charles Mwangusha, you're a new person, they don't know you, they're interacting with you for the first time, and you tell them, I have a symbol called a radio, and you still manage to convince 17,000 people to vote for you, I would consider that the perceptions and the stereotypes about rural people, the so-called voters, are not entirely true.
The cost of running for parliament in Uganda has now skyrocketed. You need probably around between 500 million shillings and 1 billion. Do you think that locks out very many potential leaders that it's more about actually what's the money than who can actually serve.
You'll never get anything done if you begin thinking about money ahead of anything else. You see, if you tried to build a house and your mason, your engineer, your builder tells you, or other people who have accomplished that, or those who haven't tried, tell you need 300 million, 400 million, 500 million, you'll never get started. People who encourage you, who get you to do things, will tell you you can start with what you have and you'll get there. I didn't spend 100 million shillings in the last run. I got 17,000 people to believe in me. I am not spending that kind of money because I don't have it. Even if I had it, I don't think I would want to invest it in politics for the sake of politics, to compete with people who have access to more resources than I do. Yes, it's very expensive, but I think the biggest responsibility falls on the candidates. Canary, you have people in the field today looking to be elected to parliament, looking to be elected to be district leaders, looking to be elected to councillors, to become councillors. And all they're thinking about is how much money do I pour into this election to be able to convince people. And that tells you one thing, they have no ideas. They have no appreciation of what this country is and what this country needs. So if you look at it, a person thinks and says, if I have 1 billion shillings, I can win this constituency. And they go, find the money first, and then begin looking for the vote. I think that the spoilage is large around who is injecting money. You don't blame the current candidates that much because it's a culture we've been building over a number of election cycles.
When you go to the campaigns, you probably know this more than me, that you find yourself spending on fuel, logistics. Those are basics, but then you also have to give out gifts to people. People now run around with ambulances or cars that look like ambulances or symbols that look like ambulances. They give out soap, sugar, and this is not to bribe voters, but this is what actually voters demand for. Have you been caught in such a scenario where you are forced to hand out some gifts?
No, I haven't. I'm trying to, as much as possible, avoid it. Where you can, it's wrong to sit and have a meeting with people and you can't afford to buy them some water for you to discuss. It's been built as a culture that people expect, if you have a small meeting, a coordination meeting, that people expect some kind of transport refund. Now, the exaggeration there is where people find that as an avenue to be able to differentiate themselves from other runners, to show that they have the capacity, they have the ability. I'll tell you one of the biggest cost centers for anybody running in electoral politics. And I want to make an appeal, a specific appeal to religious leaders. It's religious communities. It's circles, it's groups that expect not the ideas of a person that they expect, but more expect financial resources. It's understandable. Churches don't make money, but they will be running fundraisers every other day. Now, the difference is you walk in, Canary walks into the church, and he says he's making a contribution of 3 million shillings. If another candidate is there and they're going to offer 200,000 shillings, that gulf is so huge that the perception you create among the congregants is different. And they're going to gauge capacity and say, if this man could give us 3 million shillings, then we expect better. And then that attempt to look out for candidates during a political season to be able to accomplish things they haven't been able to do would be understandable, but that's, in my view, an abuse of the whole process of building churches. The parishioners build their own churches traditionally. It's something I've been speaking about even in church and telling them the elderly lady or gentleman who gets their cow out of their kraal, they possibly have 5. They get a calf out of the kraal, take it to church for a fundraiser. Charles Mwangusha is running for parliament. Kanari Mugume is another contestant. We come and bid for that and buy it, and the credit goes to the buyer, not to the person who got it out of their farm. I think that's fundamentally wrong. I told that to a church I was at recently. And I told them, you see, I have taken a calf into my farm. I have given you 2 million shillings. You're praising me for contributing 2 million shillings towards the construction project of the church or the projects of the church. The actual contributor is that elderly woman, is that elderly man who got their cow out of their kraal and brought it to church. You can attribute the same to whether someone brings in a goat, they have sacrificed it for their love of their faith. Politicians abuse that by trying to showcase that they have money when they're actually taking more from the people from whom they're getting votes. The whole game is spoiled by the players.
And you think you single-handedly can change that?
I did try in the last election. I was able, if there's one thing I succeeded in doing in the last election, was to change the narrative of how we debate
Maybe that's
politics
why you got it
and
wrong,
representation.
that's how you lost.
I came number 2. I got 17,000 people to believe in me. That cannot be counted as a loss. I only didn't make it to parliament.
Let's take a break. When we return, let's discuss parliament as now an avenue for making money as opposed to drafting laws.